We are live on YouTube.
Mm.
Ah, good. Let me tell them. Aya, we can go.
Hi, everyone, and welcome again. We are on YouTube today. We are going to have this session with Evelyn Casina, and she's, if you've been on YouTube and not going to our Facebook page, we've been doing a lot of sessions for the last few weeks, and today we're on YouTube. Evelyn, you can speak a bit and you can introduce yourself, and then we can start our session.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you so much for having me again on your platform. My name is Evelyn Casina. I am a family IT consultant, and I run a business called EveMinute Communication Solutions. We teach children digital literacy and online safety from the age of 7 to 17. And we also teach the people who are in the ecosystem of the child. That would be the parents, guardians, and educators. And for the last few weeks, I think we've been discussing a little bit on how we can adjust to the home learning sessions, because the COVID-19 has made us stay at home. And as we all know, learning must continue. So we've been trying to help parents, educators, and guardians see how they can maneuver their way around online learning. Thank you. Over to you, Jennifer.
Thank you, Evelyn. I think now you can go into the session, and today I think we are covering schools are open. I don't know if they're opening now because of the new directive, but anyway, a lot of schools, there are a couple of schools who have already started learning. So today we are going to take our audience on step by step on how to set up a classroom in the home using online platforms. So we are going to cover Zoom, we are going to cover Google Classroom, we are going to cover other platforms that are available. Evelyn?
So just enable my screen sharing so that I'm able to show my presentation. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I'll just, I will love to take you slightly on, I hope it is clear from your side, Jennifer.
It is.
Okay. I'd like to just take you through a small recap that we did over the last, I think maybe 2-3 sessions. We developed a schedule last week where I said we need to be able to involve the children in the development of a schedule, because they're the ones who are going to be partaking of the schedule. We need to be able to see when technology will be used at home for learning and when to take reasonable breaks. Of course, as you have mentioned, that there are schools that have already started their online studies, and we were foreseeing the rest of us joining school in May. So let us wait and see what the Ministry of Education will direct us again, because I know we have extended the holiday to June. But does that mean learning stops? I don't think so. Let us try and keep our children engaged, at least for the better part of the morning. So creating a timetable was one of the things also we did last week. And I had advised parents and educators to see how they can create a timetable to engage the children in the better part of the morning, because that is when their brains are active. Then towards midday onwards, let's see how we can do more life skills and practical sessions and activities. We created tech-free zones, and just to share a few of those zones, the toilet is the #1 tech-free zone. When people are having meals at home, let there no be gadgets so that people can have face-to-face human interaction. We said that at this particular moment when our children are learning at home, let us use common areas. So as much as possible, try not to have children doing their Zoom or their Google Classrooms in their bedrooms. Let them get out of their PJs and feel like they are in a quote-to-quote normal classroom setup. When we are having family time, that is playing games or watching a movie, let's try and have one device at a time at those particular moments. So again, tech-free zones are from family to family, because I know very many people sometimes also are using this technology to interact with other members who are not around. And then we discussed a little bit about having a contract. I do believe it is very important to discuss with the children who are using technology, when they're using it, how they're using it, and where they're using it. So again, depending on your environment at home, try and have a conversation with the children about how they're using technology, when they're using it, and create consequences when create consequences for them, so that at least when you're punishing them, they know why you're punishing them. And I keep advising parents not to keep withdrawing technology at any altercation with your children. Just try and have very decent conversations with them at this particular moment, because we are all anxious for one reason or another. Um, and all this is for us to be able to create conducive environments for our children to thrive, because I believe we are all creating digital champions. Okay, so today, as we talk more about safety, I wanted us to just look at the three things that are entailed in learning, and especially this online learning. We have the learner, who is the child. We have a facilitator, who is the teacher. And then we have the internet. So we cannot do online learning without these three things. And we have to be able to see how end to end it works for everybody in a way that is productive and it is meeting the desired objectives of both the educator and the student. And so when we look at the learner's part, we need to be able to see how what kind of digital competencies the child has to be able to see to be able to retain and acquire information through online platforms. The facilitators here being the school and the teachers, how are they translating and how are they relaying communication, and how are they teaching the children? Because this is not face-to-face. We are not able sometimes to read emotions of every child when we're doing online study. So we need to be able to see how creative can we be in giving our lessons to our students, so that also for the younger ones, and especially those who are in play groups and pre-primary, are able to give you at least 20 minutes of concentration in class. Internet, and I think if you look at the statistics right now from Communications Authority, and maybe just look at Safaricom's data, you'll realize that the usage of internet has really gone high, which means the tendencies of the internet being slow or not being there at all is a real possibility at this particular moment, because there's a lot of competition um, for that particular tool. And we also need to look at what can make our classes not happen. For the teachers and the learners especially, lack of devices is something that would probably make the learner not be able to acquire knowledge. Also, the fact that we all rely on power. So if you don't have backup and then KPLC decides today we are doing maintenance, your child will miss out on school. So what are the alternatives that if the power comes back, the child is still able to go back to these platforms and acquire the knowledge that every other child did? So we need to also look at how safe are our platforms. I think as of last week, when some of the international schools went back to online learning, I think by Tuesday, Wednesday, we were already getting very alarming alerts that a particular school was on Zoom and then they were hacked and people were showing the children unhealthy content, which was not very good. We need to start looking at online safety and discuss when, not if. I think we need to change our mindsets, because the when will happen, because there are very many different ways that our children can get attacked. And I would love to share just a few of those ways. Our children can get attacked by sharing the IDs for the class and the passwords to strangers, because when you have not told children what is private information and they're playing games or they're chatting with people online, there's a huge possibility that they would be lured or groomed to give those particular IDs and passwords for their classroom. So you'll find a stranger jumping into a class and logging in just the same way other students are, and they disrupt the whole classroom by sharing unhealthy content. We also need to look at the fact that our children could be culprits. There are children who are very, very uh, innovative and daring. So they would start disrupting the class by just sharing random and questionable content online. And we need to also look at the fact that if we are not adhering to the safety measures that these platforms have given us, we could have strangers who are hacking and getting into the classrooms. And that can actually become very dangerous when our children are learning and then they are busy. I mean, other people are busy just sharing their content and spending time giving them unhealthy or otherwise questionable material. So we need to discuss when it happens, not if, because ideally in any of these ways, your child could fall prey to unhealthy content online. So the Communications Authority of Kenya, through its national SAT, did share a poster last week, and we are part of the group that is working together with the Communications Authority to share this information with parents. And how can we safely conduct virtual meetings? The classroom setup is actually a virtual meeting, and people are using different platforms at the moment. I know Zoom is very popular with people. I know Google through its Hangout and its Google Meet, it's also very popular. We have WebEx, and we also have Blue Jeans, that is Facebook. We also have Microsoft Teams. Some schools also using Microsoft Teams. So in any of these particular platforms, how can we make sure that we observe online safety? So that when you generate a random meeting ID, you should not share it with a person who is not invited for that meeting. So it is very important for teachers, especially at this very moment, to start defining what private information is. And this is part of private information, so that we don't get people who are not supposed to be in these meetings getting access to content for different schools. So create a meeting ID for your students, enable the meeting room feature. I think this is something we really need to make sure that is always enabled for every online meeting. The reason being, some of the schools that were hijacked in the previous week, what came out clearly and strongly was the students logged in before the teachers, and when these perpetrators were sending unhealthy and questionable content, the teachers were not in the classroom already. So you realize that children have been left online waiting for the class to start, but there's no adult supervision. So that can be very dangerous. It is important for us to keep the children in a waiting bay as the teacher gets ready to start the lesson. So enable the meeting room feature, that is very important. All meetings should have passwords. I think every child who has a meeting ID should have a password so that they get into the meeting and the teachers are able to even use their classroom rota to see who has joined the meeting. Also let children use their genuine names in class as opposed to pseudonyms, so that at least you're even checking across your classroom rota to see this is Evelyn Casina who joined a certain class, and they're supposed to be in this particular class. And then restrict the participants' powers. Ensure only the meeting host has power to manage the participants. This is very important because you can imagine the enthusiasm that children have, that they're using gadget at this particular point to see all their classmates that they have not seen probably for now a month. There would be a lot of excitement and noise. So it is important for the educator, who's the teacher, to be able to mute, to be able to have the power to even mute all microphones, to have the power to control its participants so that there is law and order when a class is ongoing. And I'll give an example of Zoom, which is good because when you want to ask a question, you raise your hand. The teacher has the power to see that Evelyn has put their hand up and probably they have a question or they want to make a comment. Other platforms do have the comment section where the children can participate and it is open to the rest of the class. If anybody has an answer, they can provide that answer in the chat option. So there are very many ways that the teacher can restrict the power so that the class only has one particular person who is controlling it. We also have the lock the meeting feature. Once all meeting participants have joined, lock the meeting to ensure no one else joins. Again, as I said, when we are controlling the meeting through ID and password, once you have ensured that every particular person in the classroom has joined, because you're also giving them a particular lead time to join the classroom, lock the meeting so that now you don't get strangers and anybody who's just passing by an idol over the internet getting into the classroom. And then do not allow people to take screenshots. I think because we live in a data mining environment and data mining world right now, we need to be able to try and conserve the dignity and the online content that we have. And especially because the content we are giving is still what we would have in classroom. Other people might be out here praying for content and they will come to start taking screenshots so that they can go and duplicate what you're teaching your children. So do not allow screenshots in any ongoing classroom or meeting that you have. And these are things that you can either share with your participants and also restrict the audience who are in that particular meeting. Keep tabs on your attendees. It is very important actually for teachers right now, the same way that you make sure on face-to-face basis, you make sure that as your children come in, you're seeing my children have come in. As you're doing your own preparation before the class starts, you see who has not come in, so that at least you can either call and ask what happened, because there are very many people who might not attend class because of many various reasons. As I had mentioned earlier, there are people who don't have access to computers. KPLC can decide the power has gone down and that particular student is not able to be online. As a teacher, make sure that you have kept tabs of all your attendees. And for those who are not there, try and see why they did not come. Record your meetings so that in case there are students who have not joined the class, they're able to listen to the recording of the class just like they were, because then it gives them about the opportunity not to miss out on the class lessons that you have taken them through. So these are ways that we can ensure that all our virtual meetings are secure. I believe as schools right now, educators and parents, we need to start pushing a lot for either revised policies or come up with new policies, because we are in a new space, to see, number one, how we can ensure that our children understand critically what it means for them to be on online spaces. The opportunity and the responsibility of them being on an online space, it is important for them to be able to know this, so that the consequences, when they do come, they understand the repercussions of them. And as I said earlier, things like sharing your meeting ID with total strangers is a big violation to data privacy. So we need to be able to start looking at what are the kind of policies we need to do right now, to draft and pass to our parents, so that it can go to the students, to ensure that first we are protecting the students, the dignity and their privacy online. We need to be able to come up with good and reputable guidelines for how online classrooms should be conducted. The same way you have house rules or school rules in the particular face-to-face setups, I think we need to be able to translate those particular rules online. And a good example would be if a class is starting, say, at 9 o'clock, your students or your learners should have done what they need to do in the morning, and by that would be grooming. They should have had their tea. So don't have people in class and they're taking their beverage or they're taking their breakfast. Don't have people in their PJs. Don't have people who are in class and they're on their beds, because that is not ideal. Then let them understand that when they're in classroom, they cannot have other tabs that are open, so that when they start feeling like the class is boring, they can start engaging in other activities online. They need to be able to focus. And as teachers, I believe if your class is not as creative as possible, you will lose your students in 10 minutes tops. So become as creative as possible so that you keep engaging the children. Make your class interactive so that children are also participating. And in that way, they keep the sustenance of their concentration is also enlarged. So we need to be able to be very agile right now. Let your first two classes be a learning lesson, so that at least you're able to see what we did well, what we didn't do well, and what we can improve. And because this is a learning space, it is important for us to also just come up with probably maybe help groups on our social media platforms to just share information on how the online learning is going on through different schools. And I know, like these particular platforms that we are using at the moment, we have people giving feedback and we have people also sharing the experiences. So I think we also need to plug in as educators and as parents and guardians to just get to see what are other people saying about online learning, how is it working out for them, what are we doing versus the other countries or other schools, and how can we improve the experience of our learners, because ideally that is the most important thing. We also need to be in this particular, as I'm still on this slide, we need to be able to ask our parents who are now supervisors at home, we need to ask them to allow the students the independence to learn safety by themselves. Because if parents are hovering around their children, and I know it is their right because everybody is fearing their child to not to see inappropriate content, first have those discussions with them, but allow them the independence to make decisions, so that if you're not there, they're able to conduct themselves in a manner that is justifiable and in a way that is safe. So let us start having conversations between the schools and the parents to see these are the safety measures that we've put with our children. Make sure that we enforce them, make sure that we keep discussing them, so that in case the parent is not around or the parent is working and the child is learning, there is an ambience of a safe environment for that child to continue learning, and education is going on. So even as a business ourselves, we came up with safe use of technology. And one was, don't ban your children from using technology. And at this point, I think that is basically very, very obvious. You cannot have learning going on right now in the pandemic that we have without technology. So encourage your child to use technology for their educational purpose and make them aware of the dangers that come with it. I think as we were discussing how we can have the contracts between parents and children, this is a very important place to be, because right now we have extended their screen time allowance, because we have to let them study at least from 9 to probably 1, and I know some schools are doing till 3:30. But what does it mean for your child to have the responsibility of a gadget? I do believe that that is a discussion that every parent should have at the moment. Then let us make them aware of the kind of dangers. Things like identity theft, children need to learn what identity theft is and to know how dangerous it can be. People are frauding other guys online, and I know they can use the vulnerability of children and use their identity to commit those crimes. There's a lot of sexual exploitation happening to children because they're vulnerable. And
Okay,
we can
Evelyn, I want
yes.
you to talk about identity theft, because a lot of people don't know what identity theft. They think identity theft is just they'll take my photo and start a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group. After them, what identity theft? It's beyond taking the person's
Yes.
photo and posting it on a Facebook page. I don't know, because for me, I know, like I've been in the last few weeks, I have to change my password like every other day for all my because someone wants to use your identity to do something.
Yes.
To just explain a little bit more what identity theft means.
Okay. So identity theft starts, it just doesn't happen overnight. Let's first agree. What happens is there's someone somewhere who is stalking your online footprint. So they will keep checking your behavior. They will keep checking on the things that you love to visit, the things that you love to post, and so that it gives them an opportune idea of how they will mimic your activities online. Because again, with identity theft, you really have to look like the owner, because if you're going to fraud people of money, people have to see that these are the kind of things that, say, Evelyn normally does online. I'll give you a perfect example of how Facebook people used to con guys and say, I am stuck in a certain country, I'm not able to move, please send me money. And somebody will actually attach a number there and post it on your social media page. So if, for instance, you're not a person who really travels, that could look suspicious to the people who are being conned on your behalf. But for someone who really travels a lot, you'd actually think, oh, my friend had just traveled the other day, and it might be true that they're stuck somewhere. So for you, without any moment of thinking or even calling this person, you just send the money, and then you come and realize, oops, we were conned. People who also do a lot of tours, and I would think about people in the entertainment business, for instance, when they're posting each and every place where they are, people who are stealing your identity for one reason or another will mimic either to be your producer, to be somebody who is very close into your circle, in a way that they know that they will con guys because of your particular tour routine, because you've given it out on social media. So people, actually your fans know, I'll be in this town doing this, and I'll go to this other town and do this. So people can actually start frauding guys on this particular footprints that you put. There are people who share, like when you're doing, let me say, a lot of online purchases. And I think this a lot with women. We are the ones who love online shopping. And then you save your passwords on your platforms, the way you're using either Google Chrome or Microsoft, your Mozilla, and the platform actually asks, do you want to save the password? You say yes. So when somebody is trying to hack you and trying to steal your identity, they already have certain information about you that when they're calling other people, it looks almost real that it is you who's doing those things. And sometimes when it is like financial crime, they will commit crime using your name, so that in case someone is caught, you're the one who's caught in the crossfire. So there are very many ways that identity is stolen from people, but it is out of the footprint that you leave online that gives people the idea that they can mimic who you are and con people using your identity. So I hope that is clear.
Clear. Thank you much very much. You can go on.
Okay. So we also need to have conversations about sexual exploitation with our children. I know there are very many people who out here are wondering how their children's naked photos landed online. And for one reason or the other, sometimes it is very innocent between a girlfriend and a boyfriend, you know, the way they call each other girlfriend and boyfriend. And then when probably they break up, you find one of the person who's aggrieved is posting photos of your child naked online. Or the people who actually are swindling them and saying that if you send me photos of yourself online, I can send you money. And you actually even give them, to go to the extent of giving them an M-Pesa number that is private to you, because our children don't know what is private information and what is not private information. So there are people online who are actually grooming our children and dangling carrots on them that I will either send you money, I will do these nice things for you. If you have a YouTube page, I will make you have very many subscribers, or on Instagram or stuff like that. And you find that our children are being lured with these kind of things, and they send very compromising photos of themselves and videos online. So there's a lot of exploitation, and especially in the last 1 month, it has really, really risen up. So as parents and guardians and educators, number two, we need to take an interest in our children's online world. I say this with strong convictions, and especially with online games. There's no child who should install an online game without a parent vetting it, and especially at this particular time. Games can look on face value very innocent, but you realize that these games have chatting options, and that is where predators live. You might find your child playing an innocent game like Roblox or Minecraft, and they start a chat pop-up comes, and you don't know whether your child is chatting with a stranger or not, but they're busy giving out information about themselves. So we really need to right now take keen interest. If your child has a phone or a laptop or an iPad, block all those things, so such that if they want to put in a new game or go to a new social media platform, you actually have to have a very convincing discussion and deliberate discussion about these particular platforms. Remember last week I showed you how to pre-screen through commonsensemedia.org. It's also a good opportunity for you to take interest in your child's world by going to such kind of a tool, put in the name of the game or the website or the social media platform that your child wants to go into, and read the values and the pros and the cons, so that at least you see that you actually do have a grasp on what your child is doing online. Remember that you're in charge. The parent is always in control. So things like limiting your child on how they utilize their technology should always be a discussion, yes, but the parent is always in charge. If you must use filtering tools so that you have parental control on the devices. And I gave you an example the other day of the studio that I'm using for my son. Anytime he's going to a site that I have not agreed, it sends me an email, and I either consent or I deny. But prior to that, I have blocked all the sites that I feel my child cannot engage in. So we need to also create family media agreements. That is part of the contract that we discussed. Help your child learn about privacy. And I think there's a tool here that you can actually see how privacy is put. You know, the clicking, enabling and disabling of certain things online. We need to be able to do that. I had posted on my Facebook page the restriction that comes with YouTube, at least the restricted mode. At least it blocks unhealthy content, and it also has a screen time allowance where if you set 2 hours and your child has been on YouTube, for instance, for 2 hours, it actually notifies them that their time has lapsed, which is a good thing, at least also to balance the screen time of the child. We also need to help our children to think critically online. I'm a firm believer of equipping children because I'm not always with them. And number two, I am not the only person within their ecosystem who has access to technology. So I would love them to have the internal controls and the independence to know when to say yes and to say no to certain things. So because we always discuss our values and we always discuss about the good things and the bad things, because I tell them the internet is an amazing place, technology is a good tool, but we have to put certain restrictions. I would love them to carry that when they go, away from where I am, and they're meeting people who have access to this technology. So things on safety, things on values, the yeses and the nos, the do's and the don'ts, we have to critically have these conversations with our children. And even in ways that we bring out those, what we call uncomfortable conversations like sex. There's a post that I have shared on my Facebook page again that shows the different ages where certain conversations sexually come, and how you can have conversations with your children on different ages. I believe anybody above 13 years old, let us have deliberate conversations about consequences and the repercussions of these kind of things. Because when they're online, there's a lot of temptation, there's a lot of peer pressure. There is this thing called FOMO. No child wants to be left behind. They always want to be on top of conversations. So we need to be able to encourage them and have conversations with them about what they're posting. And on a critical note, on number 6, parents who have their children using TikTok, we need to be able to investigate this particular platform, because in the US, the Pentagon actually and different departments have banned their staff and their families from using TikTok because it is sniffing information. So we need to also have very deliberate conversations around security on certain platforms. Investigate what your children have put in terms of privacy. When I'm teaching my kids on these kids, I keep telling them, let's go through the privacy settings that you have put, especially on your social media platforms. Who is seeing your private information? Who is commenting on your photos and your videos? And who is able to access your content? So we need to be able, at a very early age, as they turn into teenagehood and they start open the world of social media, we need to critically have very deliberate conversations, because the one thing is true, that the internet never forgets. So as long as it has been posted out there, it is on the internet for anybody's pleasure. We also need to keep the lines of communication open. At this point, with all the anxiety, with all the underlying white and black lies, I think it is critical for us to talk to our children on a regular basis, be open. One of the things I keep telling my children is, if you mess up, because we are human beings, first forgive yourself and seek for forgiveness even from your parents. Because one or another, they will do something questionable or they will do a mistake. But that does not mean that now you start, withdrawing their technology or punishing them before making them understand the gravity of what they did. So lines of communication wide open. Also, we need to be aware of age restrictions. So I think at this particular time, even as different platforms are looking for ways to incorporate the younger learners and especially the pre-teenagers, we need to be very aware that most platforms, if not all, require children to be 13 years of age and above to be able to be on their platforms. So if as a parent or a guardian or an educator, you're not aware of this, you're actually opening up your children to use adult centric platforms for children minds, which is not fair, because then they get to start seeing adult conversations and adult content at a very young age, and that can really mess their brains up. So as we are looking at age restrictions, we need to also educate ourselves. And I keep saying, if your school gives you a particular platform, don't just trust that the school knows what it's doing. Investigate for yourself, educate yourself, because you will learn one or two things that you can actually say, okay, this platform is good, but why can't we do A, B, C, D? And I would want to say at this particular point, if the platforms that your school is using have uh, the chat option enabled, those options need to be disabled, because that is where it is a focal point for a lot of crime, and the pedophiles and the perpetrators of online crime, they all go onto the chat platforms. So let us use different ways where children can collaborate. You can use chat functions, you can raise your hands, you can do recordings, but the particular chat where there's one-to-one conversations, I think those are places where we need to completely shut off, so that children are not becoming sneaky during class. They're not just chatting with each other or also inviting strangers into their platforms. So we need to be able to be very cautious about that. We also got, and this one is from the National SAT, again, Communications Authority, where they were talking about the risks that our children face while they're online. Obviously, there is the biggest one, which is exposure to inappropriate material, inaccurate and misleading information. So we need to be able to help our children learn how to discern fake and real news. And I think when anybody feels that there's a certain news that has been posted that doesn't look real, they can ask an adult who can then verify if that news is true or not. Then, of course, they are exposed to socially unacceptable material. And I know things like porn, when they're being exploited, when there are people using vulgar language around them, that is unacceptable. Also downloading copyrighted materials such as music and films. They need to be able to know what material they can use and what they cannot use, how to give credit to material that is not there. So again, we need to be able to see how to engage our children on that. And also on that particular point, when our children are using YouTube, there's a lot of advertisement that is geared towards children. So how can we educate them to know that some things are geared towards making them buy certain things? Because there's a lot of children-centric advertisements that come on the content that they love to watch. And also exposure to sexual exploitation through the cyber grooming and cyber stalking. So we need to also look a lot around what are the kind of, how are children groomed, for instance, through gaming, through social media. They are told that, you're looking nice, the nice comments and affirmations from strangers. And once a stranger has gotten your confidence and they feel like you are in a good place, they can start exploiting you through different ways. But obviously, they take a lot of time stalking you to see what kind of a personality you are and what are your weaknesses and where are the gaps before they start engaging in conversation. So parents and educators right now, we need to use as much as we can, use filters and blocking sites, and actually even times if you can. A tool like Studio, the one that I use, is free for one child and not very expensive if you have multiple children. And I think it is a good thing because one, I use it, it helps me block the times my child is online and when they cannot be online. Because when they're not online, the machine goes on airplane mode, so he cannot use the internet when he's there. We need to be able to block outgoing content from their machines like emails and chats and personal information. We need to also see what they're browsing. So like for my children, I have only accepted the YouTube for adults to very specific sites and what they can do, because sometimes like when he's coding, he cannot get his content on YouTube for kids. So I allow specific channels where he can get his content for coding to be allowed on his machine. So we need to be able to just see how we can monitor these things. Again, as the previous slide say, educate yourself. I'm not saying that you need to be a tech guru, but it will be, ignorance at this particular time we are in, it is not bliss. So let's not be ignorant on what is happening within our spaces. So I would have some tips and procedures to implement both for schools and for homes. Educate children on keeping passwords and IDs safe. Again, if the children are signed for a meeting ID and a password for joining a classroom, let them keep those things safe. Develop a process in case passwords and IDs are compromised, just in case you realize that the passwords you gave have been compromised, you need to create another classroom and keep it tight knit. Once all your participants have joined into the classroom, lock it. Put up a policy on online learning and etiquette. I think this is something all schools need to have right now. If you don't look for professionals like us, we shall give you policies and guidelines on online learning and etiquette. When a class is hijacked by a third party or an unknown party, what protocol have you set in place? And an example of what happened, and I think Jennifer also had this some time back, she was doing a Zoom meeting and it was hijacked. She had to terminate that meeting. And I think for us, we need to be able to see if a meeting is being hijacked before the class starts, your students should be in a waiting bay until the time for class starts. And until the teachers or the particular teacher who is supposed to be running that class is there, then the meeting can start. If not, let all the students be on a waiting bay, so that at least in case something happens, there's an adult who is able to manage that situation. So what protocols are we setting in place so that in case there's something like this that happens, remember I said not if, it is when, because ideally all these platforms can be compromised. It is just a matter of when, and they can be compromised both internally or from external forces. So we need to be able to put up a protocol to say, for instance, once a class has been hijacked, close the class, see how we can start reaching out to the parents and the children who have been affected and try and manage the situation offline, then put either, because I know some of these schools, some of them blocked the use of certain platforms. I'm not going to start mentioning them, but some schools send out information to parents that we are no longer using these platforms. Even if you're going to another platform, it has to have tight security measures so that some of these things do not happen again when our children are learning. So having protocols on this, again, this is something we can help educators and schools to do, so that just in case these things happen, there's a way that we can go into mitigating the damage that has been done. Terminate the class and conduct an assessment and reach out to the students and the parents. As I said, it is important for us to terminate that class so that that content is still not showing. Get all the children out of that session, and then try and see how far and what kind of content was being shown to the children. Then try internally and see what can we do out of this, what are the learnings, what are the gaps, and what can we improve in terms of measures to put to ensure safety of our children while they're learning. So this is just a few things that I want to share. I know there's so many other things that we can put out there, but remember, as we said, follow a timetable so that your children are able to also take serious screen breaks so that they don't start developing issues with their health. Let us have mental health discussions, because our children sometimes are very anxious. So they can go into a class and then there's no learning that is happening because of the environment and the mood and the anxiety that they have. So let us see different ways on how we can help children cope. We are also learning on the move, but ideally, because the internet is there, the learner is there, and the educator is there, let's see how all these three things can collaborate to ensure that the environment first is conducive for the child, it is conducive for the teacher, and then we are able to see how to do our classes in a manner that will ensure that learning still continues. And I think our contacts are there. Jennifer, any questions from our viewers? Any questions? Jennifer?
Let me check.
Mm-hmm. It's been an hour of great learning. What have you learned?
We don't have any questions now, but I know when people watch, I think you see them a lot on Facebook. We don't have any questions right now, but thank you so much for that. And so I know it will be, but from your expertise, which one would you recommend for parents who are starters? You know, there are those ones who are experts, there are parents who are experts, but those ones who are just starting with this online classroom things, which platforms would you recommend for them to use?
Google Classroom, definitely, because I feel that in one platform, you're able to set up your class and you're able to see how you share assignments, assess and return those assignments to the students so that they can see how they're progressive, and you can get feedback from the student by using the forms. You can attach videos for explainers through YouTube. So I believe, like, personally, I am using Google Classroom and I'm finding it really, really good. Because if you're not corporate, as a corporate school, you can use Google Classroom, have audience on Google Hangouts with your students, and it is actually giving up to 30 students on Hangouts. So you can do group calls and you see all your students on your screen. And if you're doing very big classes, you can use Google Meet. And the educational platform from Google actually gives you 250 packs for a school if you're an educational institution, because they have to take you through a vetting process. So I find that if you are on Google, and for instance, you're using a Google Meet, if your students, some of your students don't attend class, you can record that and put it on a private YouTube link, attach it to the classroom, so that in case your students wants to go back and listen to a certain topic, how it was explained, how it was delivered, they can do that. And those who miss also, they get an opportunity to listen into the classroom at their own time. So personally, I'm using Google, and I know Zoom is also really good. But all these platforms, obviously, we have to make sure that we put the safety measures so that we don't have strangers coming in. So for me, Zoom and Google would be very good.
Thank you so much, Evelyn. I know today has been one of those really cold days in Nairobi.
Yes.
And so see you next week, hopefully on Facebook. And as we delve into another topic, and we like I think this week and next week, end your screen.
Oh, sorry for that. Yes, here I am.
This week and next week, I think this week Facebook and Google, they have come up with new features on their platforms.
Yes.
So we are hoping next week we are going to get details on what these platforms have. I think Facebook has just launched they've expanded their kids platform,
Messenger for Kids,
children.
Yes. Yeah.
They have expanded it, and then Google has also expanded their platform for is it Google Meets? I think Google Hangouts has just changed to Google Meets, and it has huge capacity. It has new features. So we are going to get into details next week as much, because we don't want to give you details before we know what is going on, and we have tested them. Like Google, I tried to do yesterday with Google, but it's not full-fledged in Kenya. Same even with WhatsApp. Even WhatsApp, I think they have increased their capacity. They have increased more features, but it's not in Kenya yet. But as soon as we come and we're able to test this, we are going to come through and we'll tell you what are the new features, what are the security measures that you need to take. Even with the new features, security issues still rise up. True. So we are going to get into that next week. We are trying to get to talk to one-on-one on Facebook people, and we see if we can on Thursday again, and for this discussion. And then thank you so much, Evelyn, and happy Labor Day, guys.
Thank you so much. And I think as we still wait for the directives from the ministry, for those who are having trouble, just setting their schools up, they can reach us on our platforms. Our contacts are there. Go to our website, www.ivminet.co.ke. We have been setting up schools. We just rolled out one school which had amazing feedback. So for those people who own schools and those people who are educators and they need to set up environments, just reach out to us and we shall be able to sort you out. Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day. See you next week, guys. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.